the normal IxDA presentation. We're going to cut it short because these talks are 5 to 10 minutes, but right now we have about 7 speakers. I'm Terry, and one of the organizers, so we're going to go through, see, as fast as possible. We've got a couple more board members this year. We're very thankful, and a couple of volunteers as well in the crowd. We're always looking for volunteers, so we're very thankful. I had it for David for a second, so thank our sponsors.
Yeah, so a huge thank you to Moxie for hosting us tonight. This is such an incredible space, and we're thrilled to be able to have the ability to use it. And also, Brooke from Tech Systems is here. Brooke, raise your hand. She's all the way back, and Tech Systems is always helping us out with food and drink donations, so we're thrilled to have them represented here tonight.
Okay, for what you came for tonight, we have Danny Muller with Adventures in VR from Moxie, and he's working the camera, so we're going to let him go up first. The rest of these may or may not be in order, so if anybody wants to jump in, we're not going to necessarily go in this order. Carolyn McGuire from Dragon Army, How to UX Your Life, that's going to be awesome. Rachelle Jackson, Legalese. Andy Ford, Usability Testing Hacks with an extra space. I did that. Anthony Daniel II. Please sketch before you sketch. I'm looking really forward to that. It will probably pair well with my How to Whiteboard. So we might need to talk before we figure out who needs to go first. And then Sean, Discovery and Framing. You're last because you're just doing it right now, probably. Yeah.
Also, Rob Dornbush is here. His name didn't make him.
Yes, yes, Rob, I'm sorry. And you were the first to show up, so I apologize. But thank you, Rob. So you're in there somewhere too. So we have a lot. So we're going to start quick. We're going to start with Danny, and you need to plug in. And so we're going to try to cap these at 10 minutes max. If yours is only 5 minutes, we're going to stop and move on. So it might only last a little over an hour, but we're not trying to be here all day.
Any suggestions for ringtones and timer ends?
Do the jaws thing like we did the office. Yeah, do that too.
How many people's first night here? Wow. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know where it is.
The restrooms are down this hall, all the way down to the right.
Thanks, Danny. One more thing. I'm going to pitch the holiday party, IxDA's holiday party, also sponsored by Tech Systems, and a ton of other people gave us a lot of money, contributed, and it's a huge event we had last year at El Ponce, and it is amazing. So get the tickets while they last, because it will sell out. We've already got about 60 or 70 probably out of the, I want to say 150 tickets or so we can actually let it. So check that out.
Well, I'm Danny Muller. I work here at Moxie, and I know a lot of you in the audience from different places. Some of my colleagues are here. Ken Martin, would you stand up, Ken? He's on our UX team. So I'm going to talk about a really cool project we've been doing called Stay Alive Live. It was for our open house that happened a couple weeks ago. But this is a VR game that we designed in-house, and we're going to be putting it on Steam so that people can play it, and we're going to be having a Twitch party sometime in the spring where people on Twitch are going to be playing it. Now there's a component of this game that uses your mobile device, so you can change the levels on the player between rounds, make it harder or easier. And so that's where the kind of component comes in where lots of people can play it at the same time. But there's only one player. And David, can you come back over here? You can mind having that on. And so we have one player that wears the VR headset. This is a HTC Vive. And then they have these two controllers that mimic their hands in the game. And it's interesting, when you play this with lots of people doing user testing, it gets really nasty and sweaty. So you have to have alcohol wipes so people can actually smell the alcohol between the rounds so they feel that it's sanitary. I did want to make sure that I gave credit to the whole team that worked on this. And so when that slide pops back up, Jennifer Barkley has worked with Moxie for many years. And she was our creator and designer. Brandon Kramer did the voice. There's a kind of a narrator throughout this whole game that talks to the player in the headset. And then that makes, he kind of makes fun of him the whole time. And then Jonathan Wallace just killed himself doing all the Unity work and the C# work to get the game actually working. Claire worked as our project management lead, and then we had our whole staff of UX helping out on it, and then Ivy, Scott, and Lola, who was a QA lead. And the user testing actually accomplished two things. The QA team was really busy with client work, so we actually QA'd the whole thing while we did the user testing. So that was a bonus. Okay, I'm going to do this without the sound, because the sound would just kind of interrupt. But so this is the actual game. It's a grid where you stand on this grid, and in the HTC Vive, you're in like a little room. It creates a cube that you're inside of. And the cube's floor is this grid. And the purpose of the game is to put batteries into ports. And you find the batteries, so those are batteries that are being picked up, and you try to put them into these different ports that are in those walls. So you can see on the bottom left, where that's the user's point of view. So that's the person wearing the headset, and they're trying to pick up these batteries and put them in. And then as you put them in, the backgrounds change. It has this kind of fantasy element to it. And the designer was inspired by 80s graphics and the whole 80s vibe. What's fun when you're playing it too, there's unexpected things that happen, like the batteries will shoot out of the port when you think it's just supposed to go right in. You know, there's like defects that are built in. Like that was a defect that we found, but we all liked the gameplay, so we added it as a feature. And that's one of the laser walls that come into play, where if you try to put the battery through the laser wall, it's disintegrated, so you have to figure out a way around it. And there's different, very different levels of difficulty. Now for the user testing, this is our usability test plan that Beth came up with. And so we had these different variables, and we had the pre-test and setup. We had specific questions. One of the most interesting things about this was the physiological responses, because people would get very sweaty, especially if they survived various levels. So if you survived like 15 levels, you are really hot and sweaty doing this. And it was a really an aerobic activity. You know, and I've sped this up just for time. One of the craziest things was how people would really get into it. Like this guy, he was just like really into it. And he's crawling underneath the laser wall, but he really felt that if he touched it, he would die. So we didn't tell him that he wouldn't die. And then we had some kids play it. These are all either Moxie employees or friends of Moxie, or some Georgia Tech students came in too. And so we had our different UXers. That's La Schaefer. She would help out with the interviews. So we would interview the people after their experience and find out what they really thought about it, what they liked, what they disliked. Here he's talking about how he didn't like how the batteries worked, because he had to pick up the battery a certain way. He didn't like that. This was really amazing. So he had two observations. He said, well, the helmet really hurt my head. It kind of cut his head. So hold up that thing. So it's not designed for a child's head. You know, and that was one of the things that came out of this, that this is not designed for everybody. They should really have a junior version for children, so that it's not so awkward. So here am I in one of the interviews, Beth did some of the interviews, and this was all in our Future Experience Lab, where we have funds to do these special projects. So looking into the future, what's happening, and VR is obviously happening. Who in here has worked on VR projects? Raise your hand. Yeah, so this is a nascent field, and I encourage you all to start learning Unity and C#. Because this stuff is going to be huge in a few years. And everybody thinks, oh no, it's too expensive, all this stuff is way too cumbersome. Well, hold the headset up again. So this headset has this cable problem. And so what would happen, and spin around it. What would happen is that people would actually wrap themselves around their necks. And we would have to untangle them because they're moving around so quickly. And so that was a real problem. And Vive now has a wireless piece that you can add to the headset and get rid of this big cable. So that's going to be a huge improvement from a user experience standpoint. This was a Georgia Tech student who had a lot of commentary about gameplay. He thought a lot of the gameplay was a little bit boring. Then we had comments about Sal's voice. So this narrator talks to you the whole time, and she said, oh yeah, the narrator's great, except he's really long-winded. And you really should cut some of his talking down. Because she started getting really bored by his talking all the time. And part of the game is to wear you down, and his voice kind of wears you down over time. So that was part of the joke. This was another Georgia Tech student who had some insights into how to play. He liked the voice, but he thought he was a little bit too pompous. So it was interesting to get all this subjective feedback about the game, and we are having iterations of the game now until spring, and so we're going to have the opportunity to really kind of utilize all this user feedback. We probably had 30 people play it for a duration of between 10 and 30 minutes, and we recorded all this on video so we can go back and look at the interviews and kind of replay it. And the video has been a huge asset for this kind of user testing because we grab people, they come in for a quick session, and then they leave, and we might have missed taking the proper notes, but we can always go back and look at that video. And so that's the end of the video. That's the end of my time. Thank you very much. Questions? Like 2 questions? If anybody has a question.
You got 40 seconds, come on.
Yeah, if no questions, we'll go to the next person. Okay.
So you were mentioning a couple of, are these like design platforms you were saying that we should learn how to do?
Oh, so Unity is like a game engine.
Okay.
But that's become like kind of the standard for VR. There's also the Unreal engine, but the Unreal costs a lot of money, whereas Unity is basically free, at least to start. So it's something you can download on your computer and start using.
Okay.
And I encourage you to do so.
Oh, I got it written down.
Any other questions? One more question.
Okay.
All right, I guess we're good.
Thank you, Dan. That was amazing. Love seeing the behind the scenes for the VR stuff. Carolyn McGuire from Dragon Army is going to tell us what's your title again? How to UX your life. And while she's getting set up, I want to point out some of the organizers of IxDA. Where's Jamie at? She's still here? There you are. I want to thank Jamie. Izu, over here. Me.
I'm David.
David. Who else am I missing? Sean.
John here. Yep.
And is that all we have tonight?
Luther's here too.
Luther. He's helping out. Yes. And I want to thank Jamie because she won't be able to make the holiday party and see all the fun we're having, but she did a ton of work raising thousands of dollars for us to have a great party. So, thank you. All right, you ready?
Yes. Thank you. Hey, I'm Carolyn, and I work at Dragon Army. I'm a UX architect, and I'm going to talk about how to UX your life in 5 minutes. As UX designers, we're constantly championing for the highest quality user experience. We strive to make designs that are useful and intuitive to the user. But what if we could apply those same principles to ourselves to live happier and more efficient lives? So at the beginning of any project, if there's already an existing design, the first thing you might do is a site audit, and in this case, a self-audit. So take a good hard look in the mirror and ask, what are some of my strengths? What are some of my weaknesses? And if you don't think you have any weaknesses, then you need to get a better mirror. In design, when building an MVP, you have to make a lot of cuts. So think about what kind of cuts you can make to yourself. Are there any habits that you think you can get rid of? Any persisting thoughts that are pestering your mind? Make a conscious effort to get rid of those. Write a list out, see what you have, what you'd like to keep, and what you need to get rid of. Because with time in such short supply, why waste it on the superfluous? The second idea is competitive research. So take a look at who's out there. What leaders inspire you? What makes these people great? Are there any habits you can pick up on that you can take into your own life? I know one of my favorite leaders was a Roman Stoic named Seneca. And he said, when asked, what is happiness? That happiness is security and lasting tranquility, the source of which are a great spirit and the steady determination to abide by a good decision. So after you've taken a self-audit and gathered some inspiration, it's time to do a site map, or in this case, a roadmap for your life. And this involves asking the questions, who am I? Where did I come from? And where did I go? Where am I going? Who am I? This is your purpose or your value proposition. Where did I come from is not simply, oh, I was born in Washington, D.C. It's taking a look at where you were and where you are now and how you got to that point. For me personally, I was a huge fuck up in high school. And I failed every single one of my classes in my first year of college. But then I turned my life around and became a UX designer, and now I work at a really awesome tech company. So the next step is taking a stab at a redesign, redesigning your life. And with any body of work, you can't do it all at once, right? So think about some of your strengths and 1 or 2 of those and see if you can dial in on those and amplify those. For me, I think I'm a pretty good listener, so maybe listening at a deeper level to see if there's anything else I can pick up on. As for weaknesses, I'd say pick one weakness and see what you can improve on. For me, it's doing more of what I say I'm going to do. So, for example, following through with the commitments that I make, or learning how to say no for things I don't want to do, or things that I don't have time to do, like this talk. Next. And finally, measure your success. In the Pythagorean school, Pythagoras had his students at the end of every day write down what they had done that day. So maybe take a look at your life after each day and acknowledge your successes and look at what you could have done better, but iterate and improve and know that tomorrow is always a chance for improvement. Woo!
Thank you, Carol. I have the joy of getting to work next to her every day. It's really fun. True story. So, who wants to come next? Because I have people moving toward the stage. Rachelle, you want to go? Is that what you're thinking? Okay. So Rachelle Jackson has legalese, managing the relationship between legal and design, coming up as she gets plugged in I don't have any jokes, but somebody else wants to tell us. No. So next time we do these like once a year. We can do it more. But I make a call, or we're like, hey, come join us. And a few people sign up, and then we have to nudge people. But this is your chance to stand up here and not be frightened that you have to stand up here for 45 minutes or an hour. That's kind of scary, I know. But this is a very low-risk way of getting into speaking and developing your professional skills. And I'm going to let Rachelle go now. Good.
Yeah, thank you. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. All right, so my topic tonight is on legal ease, managing the relationship between legal and design. And I think it's an area that many of us don't think about when we first go into design, but when you get there, you really are there with legal. So I'm going to go through some of the things I've learned in dealing with legal at a large corporation.
Testing.
Just a little bit closer.
I'll get closer. Is this better? Yeah. All right, so what we're going to go over today is how do we make sure that we meet legal requirements without sacrificing design. So to set the context, you worked on your app or your website, and you're pleased with it. It's simple, it's nice, it's clean, and then legal comes along, and this is what you get. And the thing about legal is they're always looking at how can they mitigate risk, which is not always in the best interest of user experience. So one of the things we need to look at is how can we get to a point where we can collaborate with them and still not hinder our experience. So one of those things we can do is to continue to collaborate that relationship. And one of those ways we can do that is get an ally. So if you're in a large company, most of the time you're going to have a line of business attorney or a general counsel that works directly on your product. Leverage that person to the magnitude. So they usually are closer to the product, so they understand it better, and they often speak people a little better than your specialty attorneys for privacy or marketing legal. So leverage them to the best of your ability. And start as soon as possible. And this can be tricky because sometimes that requires you to do non-designy things like send Word documents to them with all of your copy that you're proposing for your area. But the sooner you get their eyes on it, the easier you can understand where they're coming from. And that is the next big point. Empathize with them. So at the end of the day, they are your stakeholder, and they do have a goal that they're trying to reach to meet their job. So really think about what do they need? Why are they asking you that specific thing to put in the copy or to clarify to the user? And it can be a difficult situation because sometimes they don't always clearly state what they want. It's like a magic thing lawyers do. They talk around it, they give you the legal ease, they give you the technical terms, but this is also an opportunity for you to, again, to leverage your ally because they'll be able to, one, explain it to you in context of your product, as well as go and have those conversations with the additional attorneys for you. So you say to them, this is what we're trying to do in the app or with our products, and they'll go have that conversation and bring it back so it doesn't put you in the tangled web of legal land. Ultimately, what most attorneys want is informed consent. And if we really look at this as a design challenge versus a legal versus design issue, we'll get there faster. So this isn't about legal just putting restrictions on us. It's about our customers or our users being informed, which ultimately is a good thing because that's what we do as designers, make sure that we're giving them information in a useful and meaningful way. So if we look at it from that standpoint versus them versus us and a design challenge, then it takes the fight out of it. How many of you have ever been on an email chain with a bunch of lawyers who are upset because you didn't do what they asked you to do? Yeah, I don't recommend it. She understands. The email can get back and forth, heated, so you want to try to avoid that. So don't shoot yourself in the foot by just saying no. Really, like I said, empathize and ask them, why are you asking this? Why is this a requirement? What is the legal requirement? And above all, at the end of the day, get creative. It is our job as designers to look at how can we inform our users without hindering their experience. So yes, we have to do the pesky by continuing, you agree to these terms of service, blah, blah, blah. We have to do that, but how can we present that in a way that's not intrusive? Or there's things that we have to clearly tell the user about what they can delete or add when they're adding someone or sharing, but make it in context. So the attorney is saying, we must tell the user, well, how about we tell the user what is actually the most useful and the most relevant to them versus shoving it in their face when they first get into the app. So just exploring ways of how we can meet legal requirements, have a collaborative relationship, and really build that ally that we need. So in synopsis, get the ally on your side, start as soon as possible, empathize with them, identify the crux of the matter. What are they really asking? Because sometimes it's something really simple and you'll go back and forth and then you realize, oh, all they wanted is us to just say this one thing right before the person tapped create account. And then get creative, which is our job to do anyway. Thank you.
Does anybody have questions for Rachelle? We have 5 minutes. Questions? My wife is a lawyer. I could ask you questions. If there's no questions, then I think we're good.
Do you want to go? Rob? I think Rob wants to go. See the device.
All right, get him up here. So,
All right, we're doing good on time, I think.
hey, Rob.
I might need a couple minutes.
Okay. So who's going to the Christmas holiday party? That's good. Who went last year? That's a good one. That's good. Excellent. Give me something else. I'm not the guy that tells jokes before Carson or whatever. Colbert. Definitely not.
All right, so Rob is going to talk about starting the UX conversation, working to live, and visualizing world peace. Rob and I have been friends for many, many years. We used to work together at AutoTrader. He's an incredibly brilliant and talented designer, and he's now working at IxDA. So if you stop by there, you can see him and say hello. Are you ready to go, Rob?
Yeah, I'll be drawing while I'm talking. Can you hold that for a minute and then
Yep.
I'll take it from you?
All right.
So I'm tying together 2 or 3 threads because I think that's the best way to sort of get a big punch in a short period of time. I don't want to go into the weeds on any one topic. But the thing, let me start by saying there are several roles I've filled over the years, and interaction design may be the one I'm most comfortable with. But that being said,
You go mic or you
I'll do the mic, but I can't draw and mic at the same time.
Maybe you get a hold.
So what, I'm drawing several roles up here on the board. This one, I'll give it a disclaimer, it doesn't really matter who those user roles are, but the text on the right, it's hypothetical for the job I'm doing now. Right now I'm working at 9 labs. I'm working on a thing for the booking flow at Intercontinental Hotels. So these aren't the actual users types for Intercontinental Hotels, but imagine how do you start the UX conversation on any project? It's a matter of, there's BA skills involved, which may not be part of your agile design process, but at the end of the day, no matter what questions somebody else has asked, you as UX designer need to go in and ask some questions, maybe some deeper questions, and dig on certain things that give you a picture of what it is you're trying to build. And so, people talk about the UX unicorn. That's bad. Visual design, front-end development, and solution architecture. So out of all these roles, BA is the one that's most forgotten. I can see that. So, to me, information architecture is still key. And that's kind of about site structure, navigation, what's on the menu, how do you find what you're looking for. Over the last 10 years, I've done a lot of enterprise websites where there were 10,000 websites under one homepage. And they want you to come in and redesign that. And how do you organize that? You know, it's not a tree hierarchy. It's not your mother's sitemap, okay? It's like a hub and spoke model, and it involves gradual change over time, working with people, doing old-fashioned exercises like card sorting, and putting, you know, maybe you have a template-driven system to clean up the visual design footprint throughout the enterprise, so that we say there's 7 or 9 site types, and for each, you know, each site type has a unique business purpose. But I digress. So the idea behind this is that you can come in and say, you know, 3 basic things. Who are the users? What is the content? And how will they access that content in the process of doing tasks they expect to be able to do on this website? That's key to any, you know, you can start a conversation with subject matter experts who don't really know what to expect working with design. They're a little uncomfortable. If you ask them to come up with ideas out of their back pocket on what they want you to do, they're not, you know, what's the difference between a UX designer and a business analyst? A business analyst just takes down dictation, what the business wants. What we do is we draw a picture. We have a vision how to execute on that. So where the BA thinks they're not supposed to tell the how, but just the what, that's our job. We tell the how. We draw a picture of the how, and we step people through it. And when you get beyond just one web page to how do I click from one page to the other, that's the interaction design piece. And so, in addition to the who are the users, you know, what are their needs and preferences, what did they come to the website to get or do today, what tasks do they expect to accomplish, how do they get in and grab what they need in as few steps as possible and get out happy. So this idea, I'll draw it again in a different context. Instead of a hotel, let's say it's a bank website, hypothetical Bank of Monrovia. And I have 4 different kinds of banking users. You know, one might be a loan officer, one may be a teller, one may be the bank operations support, one might be bank resources, another call center, and yet another one might be the, let's say, sales, okay? So this is like customer care and this is customer sales. Now somebody comes to you from the business and they say, I want you to do this website, and the salespeople really need it, you know? So the number one perspective, I really only care about making it sort of a product brochureware that helps them quickly distinguish one product from another and recommend to people, you know, this is the banking product for you. Is it a deposit account, a loan account, student checking versus interest-free checking, or et cetera. So then you fill in this part with what's everything in the universe of content here at the bank. That's what's inside the circle. So that would be things like I said before, deposit, loan. Let's say I've got something for mortgage loan versus vehicle loan versus credit card products. Maybe we've got 5 or 6 different credit cards. Okay, and then we've got the checking and savings accounts. And we have equity lines of credit, but you get the idea. Some of these may hit, you know, one particular product vertical within the bank, like a line of business. Some of them may hit a whole server of knowledge management or custom, you know, support solutions. And so the point of this is not really what the content is or who the users are, but as I map it, I start to say, okay, as this type of user, I need to get in the circle to get this piece of content. It takes me 5 steps to get it, and I get out happy. So what am I doing as I do that? I'm starting to outline user stories as very simple bullet points. And so really, where something scary like user task analysis, how am I going to jump in and analyze, you know, break it down the tasks that people need to accomplish on this website? If you just start with the basics of who needs to use it, what is it they expect to access, what's the whole universe of content available to them, in this case the hotel model, in this case the bank model, and then you know, how are they going to access that on a daily basis? For .com, it's in the process of executing transactions or managing their account, and for internal business apps, it's in the process of doing their daily job assignment. And one more thing, which I won't write it down because it takes too much time and distract my attention away from you, but another set of questions, 4 more questions. So my drawing may not be elegant, but this is drilled in my head in sharing it with customers so many times over and over again. It's been very effective that I've memorized it. I think it can help you to start those back on the, EA may be the loneliest role out of these various roles that we're talking about, and maybe solutions architecture, another one that's somewhat esoteric. I've filled all these roles, and I feel like as a UX designer, I have to do interaction design, I have to do information architecture, and I have to do a little bit of business analysis. And so at the end of the day, you want to ask, what problem are we trying to solve here? Where is the data to support that there is a problem? What will success look like? Where do we want to be when this is over? And how will we measure that success? Okay? And so the other piece I want to leave you with is that a lot of people in our line of work as designers, they're sort of walking around with those big dark bags under their eyes and their eyeballs kind of sunken into their head like a skeleton. They're too much live to work, right? Their whole life is dedicated to the workaholic, and there's nothing time left for work-life balance and for their friends. So the work to live instead of live to work. Set aside some time after work to go out with your friends, to be with your family, to have that work-life balance. And when you do that, it'll put you in a happy place where you can visualize world peace. And if we, imagine we're all at a concert and it's a rainy day. It's kind of crappy because it's an outdoor concert. But if the clouds keep floating by and we're thinking, God, I wish the sun would come out. If everybody wished that at the same time, the sun will come out. And so you have to dedicate part of your life not just to those things that your boss or your program project manager is pushing you to get done by the deadline, but to things that matter to your kids and your wife and your dog and your friends. That's it.
You got 45 seconds
Yes.
if you want.
Does anybody have questions for Rob? 45 seconds.
Get the mic.
Any questions at all?
Okay.
All right, Robert, what's going on?
Can everybody, all right. Andy Ford is going to be talking about usability testing hacks with no slides.
With no slides.
All personality.
Actually, that's not true. I went old school and had to print it out on a piece of paper. So, my name is Andy Ford. I am a UX strategist, which is another way of saying that you've been a designer for so long that you past being a designer, a director, and you're just at this point. So anyway, I want to talk about doing usability testing from the perspective of being a designer. How many of you guys have ever done usability testing? How many of you guys have been in charge of leading usability testing? Okay, so for most of you, this might be familiar ground. For those of you who have never done it, this is my experience. I had to learn the hard way, and so hopefully there will be some things you can take from this, so you don't have to learn it the hard way. Okay, so my background in usability testing, I had thought that it was the type of thing that needed to be executed by experienced researchers who were able to back up their thesis with quantitative and qualitative results. And the reality is that on a basic level, you're just trying to find out whether something is useful or not, where there are holes, and then how to go back and fix them. And there are ways to do this with relatively simple tools like getfeedback.com. I have no affiliation with them whatsoever. But there are a number of other customer experience tools that help make this easy as well. So the first time that I was involved in usability testing was a VP from Starbucks who tasked the agency that I was with to set up usability testing for Tivana.com. I'm not sure how she found us because she was based in Seattle and she had never heard of us. So what I did is I shied away from writing the proposal since I had never led usability testing before. I didn't know how to price it or how to do it. So she was persistent, and I sheepishly sent her the estimate. As fate would have it, we won. And she signed off on it rather quickly and then let me know that she and her team would be here in 2 weeks. So the first thing that I had to do was start Googling how to do usability testing. The other thing too is the agency that I was with thought that I knew how to do this as well. So there's really just 3 main components to a usability test. There's 1, the usability test itself, 2, the qualitative and quantitative metrics that you can get out of it, and the third thing is finding participants, and I'll save this for last because this is where things can go wrong. So first, let's start with the usability test. In the case of Tivana, I simply went to the website, again, put holes in it. This led to the task that I incorporated into the usability test itself. And this is rather easy when it's not your own work, because everybody can be a critic. But when it is your own work, you have to be willing to throw yourself under the bus and show some humility. This can be a little daunting at first, and it kind of sucks, but over time, after you get a few laps under your belt, you can figure out how to do it gracefully. Plus, usability testing is not about right or wrong in terms of how you guess with your design work. It's whether the organization that is funding your efforts is getting maximum ROI to create the best customer experience. So the second thing you'll need is a way to measure responses. Like I mentioned before, getfeedback.com or a number of these other tools work great. You need some way to be able to have people be able to measure things on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 to 10, something along those lines. And what that does is it provides an organization with a summary of pain points and opportunities, allows you to have a reference as to prioritizing your labor relations. So, a quick example, I was designing an app for a charitable donations organization. The business's only concern was gathering credit card information up front because anytime there was a transaction with a local merchant, they got a cut of the transaction on the back end. So what I designed with the onboarding flow is with the business's needs in mind first. And then when we took this to paper prototyping and began testing in front of users, they didn't get why they were being asked for the credit card information up front. And so I had to go back and basically redesign the entire flow, put myself in the shoes of the user, and provide that onboarding information up front to let them know that every time that they were conducting a transaction, the charitable organization that they selected was getting a percentage of the donation, which then made them feel a lot better about downloading the app, providing the credit card info, and that sort of thing. That was the type of thing I would not have learned had I not put that in front of users. Get feedback is a great tool, again, for being able to get numbers and quantitative results, and basically try anything that works best for you. And this is great too because it provides numbers and metrics as opposed to a personal opinion. So, conducting the usability testing is required you to be a little bit of a people person and dig as much information out of the participants as possible. What I like to do is give the participants a series of tasks and dig into their thoughts and find out what they're really thinking. So this really requires me sitting beside them, asking them what they think, articulating, again, their thoughts as they're going through it, and really kind of being able to really kind of gauge where their pain points are, and that sort of thing. So the final thing, finding participants. In the early days, I did not recognize that there was an art to this. And this is where you want to make sure you vet the participants up front. First of all, people need to be incentivized. And I've always found that $75 persuade someone to take an hour out of their day to give you their opinion. And that's what you want. People are not shy about expressing their opinions, no matter how brutal they may be. And the more honesty, the better. I tend to lean on a Facebook group. It's based in Buckhead, because I know I'm going to get better educated and more articulate participants. I posted an ad on Craigslist once and ended up with people who don't have jobs and neglected things like personal hygiene. So they're not the most helpful participants. And keep in mind, these are people who are walking in off the street, likely have never participated in a usability test, they don't know what they're in for. So be sure to be warm and inviting to them. Remind them that you're only seeking their opinion, there are no right or wrong answers. A lot of times when we get people in usability tests, they tend to think that they're trying to provide you with the answer that you want to hear. So remind them that you're trying to get the best possible result. So to wrap it up, it's not as daunting as you might think. You just need to have the right approach to it, get a few laps under your belt, and be able to ensure that the designs that you are paid to do deliver for those who are funding your efforts. Plus, you'll deliver better results that will shape your approach to design moving forward and make you a better designer overall.
Thank you, Andy. We have Andy. Is there any questions? He's got about a minute and a half if anybody wants to shoot him something about a usability testing app. Question?
I do have a question. Have you ever used any recruiting services?
Nope.
All right, Anthony. It's up to you. So, yes, Anthony is going to speak about sketching. What is it? You're going to have to remind me. I'm not looking at it.
Sketch before sketch.
Sketch before sketch. So I'm excited that you don't like one-up me since I'm next with a drawing, also a drawing thing. So I'm kind of worried a little bit.
Are you worried?
I don't know. What if you tell me everything I'm doing wrong?
All right, people. So I'm going to be talking about sketching before sketch, or illustrating before getting into Illustrator, or whatever before Photoshop. Your program doesn't matter. How many of you guys just go straight to your graphics editor? Man, right. It's okay. Sorry, you're not the only one. We're here to push forward. I used to do it as well. But as I realized that my workload gets pretty filled up and I have a bunch of product owners or a bunch of designers or interns or a bunch of things just breathing down my neck on a daily basis, I can't just be in Sketch all the time. So let me give you a little background of myself really quickly. All right. My name is Anthony Daniel. I work for Honeywell. I'm a senior interaction designer and visual designer for our aerospace division. So in other words, I work with Jamie McAtee, and I make cool software for pilots, which is a really awesome job. And so just before we leave, just follow me on whatever you guys want to do, and then we can just, get the party started at this point. So what you need basically to get started with this is simple. You just need a writing utensil, you need paper, a marker would be helpful, and a ruler, and imagination. And you don't have to be an artist. So if you can't draw, how many people can draw in here right now? All right, cool. So we got a few people. How many people really suck at drawing? Awesome. So the good thing is, this works for you guys. Because actually it'll be to your benefit because you don't have to be perfect to get buy-in. And that's what we want, to get buy-in from our product owners and everything else. So this is my kind of arsenal on a daily basis. I have a 6-inch ruler, I have a 20% marker. You don't have to do what I'm doing, by the way. This is ridiculous, actually. I have a 30%, I have 2 microns, I have an eraser, because I like to draw my prototypes as I'm going to design it. So therefore, I don't have to wireframe and sketch. I go from my prototype that I designed immediately into sketch as soon as I get buy-in. So here are some examples of the things I do on a daily basis. Right now, I work a lot with data, I work a lot with all kinds of things in dashboards, and I'm trying to convey messages to several people at a time, including my internal team of UXers. But the biggest thing that I've learned that has been super effective for me is that if you actually sketch out your prototype before you design anything, you will get more feedback immediately without having to do extra work than if you just opened up Sketch and tried to like sit at your desk for like 5 hours and do nothing, because that's happening to everyone. So this is some of the things that I've done. Basically, what it involves is I sketch it out by thinking of several ideas. I ideate on paper. I have my iOS developer next to me. I have Jamie next to me, who's our resident researcher and information architect. I have a bunch of people around me and we're discussing things. And this is before I even do a interactive prototype. Turn technology, please. Okay, all right. So, why is this important? Well, as you see up here, it's super important because collaboration helps make everybody's life easier. And not the collaboration where you just sit and listen to Taylor Swift in the corner whenever you want and just come back and be like, hey, I have an idea. I'm talking about sitting in the trenches with your crew and really getting on each other's nerves with ideas and your mind internally saying, this idea sucked, but because we're friends, can I share that with you? That actually doesn't happen between me and Jamie because we're cool like that. But other than that, the other thing is like it solidifies design direction before you actually do any design. What I told you is kind of the same method that architects do or interior designers do. You never see them take clay. You never see them pick up a brick or anything before they actually design stuff first. They have their sketches. They have several pieces of paper everywhere. So at the end of this event, tomorrow, take some copy paper, don't tell HR, take some copy paper, get a pencil, paper, and everything else that you need to actually get started. Sit with your product owners, sit with your teammates, sit with your iOS developer, and just start sketching before you do anything digital. It's super important. And I'm gonna stress this. Communication is super important because, like, as a designer, you're working with several potential setbacks, drawbacks. If your team is here, it's cool because it's easier for you to interact with them. But if you're not with your team and they're remote, that means you have to at least communicate as much as possible. You gotta have that. You gotta have your annotated wireframes. You gotta have your annotated sketches. It's important to do that. It's been super effective for our team, our product, and everything else. I'm gonna show you an example of that. And Neil McGrath Tyson so as well. All right. So, in one of my previous sketches that I had, I was showing one of my wireframes. I'm gonna go back to it. So I'm on this project called Flight Preview, where it essentially helps pilots preview in a 3D format how to get from one destination to another, simply. And we were tasked with an issue of, we got rejected from the Apple Store recently because on our subscription screen, we didn't display enough information to the user before they had to buy something. So before I went back into Sketch, I had so many people working with me. I had to sketch out several interaction states that would show, A, where we could put the information for them to have insight on their purchase, as well as some of the micro interactions that are going to make their lives easier, and some things, contextual cues that would help them make the interface seem more intuitive. So going back to the final design, and I had an interaction prepared, but it's too late to show you. This is what was a result of that. After 2 weeks of sketching, going back and forth, what we've done is essentially We found a way to position Marcom. We found a way to make it known that they have all the information they need to pay for the subscription without feeling like they've been duped by anything. And in addition, there's several micro interactions that happen dynamically as they're interacting with the app. And the result of this is that we got approved in the Apple Store, and it's live now. And this was something that was super effective. If we just sat back and did everything digitally without communicating and stuff like that, we probably wouldn't have gotten this far. So I'm gonna stress, again, make sure you sketch before you sketch.
Any questions? Here you go.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if you had any advice for if a team wasn't co-located, how do you sort of facilitate that sketching process with?
I would say the easiest thing to do is to find a conference room or a lunch table, get some wired paper, or get some like lined paper or just blank pieces of paper and just talk about it. But first, think about what are the things you're trying to solve. Ask all the usability questions up front, and also ask what are the business advantages. Sort those out like you would whiteboard them, what Terry's about to talk about, I'm sure. Shouts out to him. And that's how you get that conversation started. But that should happen every day. And it needs to happen at every level, essentially.
Any other questions? All right.
Terry.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to do my presentation as we go, since it's about whiteboarding. So we're going to see if we can do this. Somebody's going to have time, to be honest.
Oh, you're right.
All right. Bear with me. How to whiteboard. How many people have used the whiteboard? How many people enjoy using the whiteboard? Okay, I'm not going to take your UX cards tonight. So basically, when you get on the whiteboard, it's about communicating. Verbal communication is not necessarily my forte. Visual is. That's right. You got a little eye. So the great thing about visual communication is it adds credibility when you're the person in the room that can get up and actually communicate the idea that no one else in the room can agree on. How many times have you been in a meeting room and you're talking about some interaction, about some scroll thing, and it's going to pop up and CSS is going to magic do this and that, and everybody's kind of around it, but you just know he doesn't have in his mind what she has in her mind. And could be for like 8 people. Happens all the time in business settings. That's where your skill as a visual communicator comes to play. So, communication, credibility, and sharing these ideas with groups. So you basically become the leader of the group. You start drawing when people start fighting. Okay? It's true. If I see people arguing, I pick up a marker and I start to say, can I draw what people are in their minds I think they're talking about? And then I just point at it and go, is this what you mean, Fred, Jamie? And eventually we coalesce around it, or we yell and say no, or we agree. But at least you know that there's some semblance of agreement, right? So, the last thing is speed. There is nothing faster than a whiteboard, except maybe Anthony with a pen. But a whiteboard has flexibility that pens do not have. Because you can literally, at any moment, just erase with your finger. You don't even need a tool. And so as you go, you can literally, be drawing, and you're adding a little bit of dimension because you didn't quite do it right the first time. Can you see it back there now? So as you draw, you actually, the first time you did that, that's great, and then you turn around, and when everybody's talking, you turn around and you bolden up these lines, and you give it a little bit of extra oomph, and now you can see it from the back row, right? And you can be as anal as me. That's not my skills, but we'll get to this. All right, how many minutes I got?
About 6.5.
Left?
Yeah.
Great. Perfect, I'm right on track. So, first tool, Expo markers. Do not buy shit brand, I warn you. You will regret it. Buy Expo markers. Low odor for Jenny. Next, draw first, think first. Draw before you even think. Then draw. Depends on what you're doing, right? So, yeah, sounds confusing. It's not. Just draw. It'll figure itself out. So sometimes you think really system-wide, and you just start drawing it, and then you erase some stuff, and then you'll get there. But sometimes you can't see everything in your brain as clearly as you can draw. I mean, all you have to do is look at that Rob's map. If you could think of that in your brain and hold that all in your head, go ahead. You can probably.
It helps to come in the room half an hour early and draw. It builds confidence in your presentation.
That's good. That's good. Thanks, Rob. And
I should have done that.
that's okay. But the point is, at some point, a human mind has a hard time holding everything in its head, his or her head. So you have to really get around that stuff. All right. So let's get to the drawing because I don't have much time. So I'm going to give you some tips. So you can draw, you're drawing and you're like, oh, I drew a little rectangle, that's a mobile phone. Or you can draw with some intent. Draw past the lines. So architecture, they teach you don't do like short lines like this. So if I'm going from here to there, you don't do that. You do one long stroke. And if you pass it, no big deal. Nobody cares about that. And guess what? You know what we can do, right? That's right. You can fix it later. So go past where you want to go. It's sketchy, remember. This is lo-fi. We'll talk about fidelity in a minute. Fidelity. Resolution. That was the next thing. Luckily, I looked at my notes. So when you're in here and you're like, oh, I'm building a mobile app, and you're like, okay, I'm a logo, and logo, thing, text, button, not a button, whatever, right? You can see that, you get it, it's an interface. Sure, it's an interface. But there's also the next level. What people make mistakes of is not understanding the resolution you're drawing at. This is extremely important. Thank you. If you don't understand anything else from this, figure out as you're doing it the fidelity needed, and always err on the lower usually. Okay? So if I wanted to draw this same interface, I could actually say, I don't know, whatever, like I'm going back, and I could actually say the name, and I could say title, and I could draw a box, and I could say, name or something, right? And draw a box. Or I could just go like this, or even this, right? So these are different fidelities. Once you start adding words, you're adding that extra fidelity that you don't always need. Because everybody in the room knows that this is a form with a CTA, and then everybody knows what it's going to do. You don't really have to worry about what it says, okay? So don't get caught up in that. Modals, I'm going to skip models. Modals, here's just a little trick. You do a modal, just draw some diagonal lines if you want to do, say, on Dart. It's quick. Don't get too fancy. Left or right, when you're going, and let's say we're going to do a mobile app, as you go in, you're going deeper, and you kind of figure out this, kind of how you're doing a wire. So like you might have like a dotted line here and have an alternate view, or you could even do some like, so this is like alternates. So this is like normal flow, this is like some alternate flows. So kind of set it up kind of the way you're setting up your like big vision sitemap at the same time. I generally do this. It doesn't always work, it gets really complex sometimes, and then you have to start hanging extra things out, and you've all used extra 2 minutes. Oh boy, here we go. This is where the rubber hits the road. 3D does show depth. Sometimes you want to show a flyout over a flyout, or a panel coming over a panel. And you can put some whoosh lines even, really cartoony, and so you got this thing and this, so it's you're showing levels, right? You don't need that much, but every now and then you need to show depth, because people don't understand a panel on top of a panel. Connectors. Next thing, and I don't have a green, but normally I would use green for a red weld. So if you had a button, you could do like this. Even though we call them red routes, which y'all can look that up if you don't know what it means, the primary heavy path. You can use a green pen and then use blue pens for other routes, right? This is an awful pen. So what's cool about this trick is you can actually align your connectors with Axure colors, and the Axure connectors will match it. And so what you're doing is you're teaching your entire company what connectors mean in the whiteboard, and then when they see an Axure file, the developer, they see the exact same connector colors, they're starting to learn that language. Okay, so this is a little advanced. This is a newer technique I'm using. You have to get a company around that though, or at least you can do it for fun for yourself and only you'll know. That's okay too. So, focus on the message, write clearly. I didn't talk about that, but if you want to get a book by, I think, Francis Ching in architecture, I started in architecture, teach you how to architectural letter. The important thing isn't how you letter, it's that you letter so that people can read it. I can understand when people can't write because you can't see it. And if 1/3 of the room can't even understand your English on the board, it's a problem. So I write really slow, and I mean crazy slow compared to most people. But it's okay, because at least you can probably read what I write. And I'm out of time. So the last thing I'll leave you with as I'm walking off the stage is take pictures and use Microsoft Office Lens, because if you get a really bad shot with a bunch of shine, it will take the perspective, it'll flatten it, and it'll take out all the glossiness. It's a great program, Microsoft Office Lens. That's it.
Hi, I'm Sean Gerety from Home Depot. I'm with the Enterprise UX team, and we're a small cadre of about 115 UXers heading over in Vinings, and we work on any enterprise problem that shows up within Home Depot. So we basically work on the apps that are used internally within Home Depot. And tonight I'm going to chat a little bit about discovery and framing. But people have probably heard this called the double diamond method. We've just kind of rebranded it internally. Next. So discovery and framing is really about doing two things. Designing the right thing and designing things right. Next. Basically, if you look at the two diamonds, discovery's on the left, framing's on the right. The whole idea is to diverge, go wide, and figure out that you're designing the right thing, and then converging, getting some synthesis, and then doing the same thing during the framing portion. And so you guys see that? Okay, good. So the first activity is all basically researching. Second is synthesizing it. Next we move into ideation, and then we validate that. And the way we kick things off is we have a problem statement that we're working with. So we have a good idea of what we're actually going to learn about. And you can do any research activity. Interviews, analytics, user maps, competitive analysis, journaling, observational research, anything. From there, we then go into the synthesis portion. You're on it. We'll then do some things like affinity mapping to find out insights, and those insights usually follow, we like to use on my team, the situation, behavior, impact, so that we have a good understanding of what the finding is. From there, we then get some general themes and problem statements, and then we may do a service blueprint or a journey map or an experience map to help find opportunity areas, pain points. And then that point where the two diamonds meet together, we have an alignment meeting, and that's pretty much where we have a whole list of themes that we want to attack. We'll take that first one, and then go into design things right, where we'll do design studios, get as much ideas as we can, and it could be a how might we exercise, all kinds of brainstorming, idea storming that we would do, and then from there into the converging component. On fire again. We do testing, prototyping, and we just iterate until we feel comfortable with that. And then from there, we move into what's called an inception meeting. And at that point, we're writing user stories with our developers. We may do a story mapping exercise, depending on what comes out of that. So, and we're hiring. We need about 30 to 50 new people. So, Nick, if you raise your hand. You want to go chat with me. So, any questions?
Yeah, you have 6 minutes.
Sweet.
Come on.
Quickest talk ever. Yes, ma'am. So to repeat the question, what is that? What's the most problematic phase?
Yeah.
I think when we go back, so far, building testing, that prototyping and testing phase has not been problematic. It depends on how complex the problem is that you're working on and how big you're going. Probably, I would say in the beginning, the research, just getting the sheer amount of research. We had one discovery phase where we had 51 interviews. We also had analytics reviews. We had technical landscapes. So just taking that information and coalescing it into something that we could then use in the framing portion. Any other questions? Luther?
How long are you guys taking to do all this? Like, is it
week, 2 weeks?
Yeah. How long?
So we don't have a timeline set on our discovery and framing effort. We did a portfolio discovery effort that was 7 weeks. Our current discovery and framing effort is about 4 weeks total. You can have a 1 week discovery and 1 week framing. I'm sure someone could even do it in 1 week. It's very similar to a design sprint. Any other questions? Excellent, thank you.
Okay, looks like that's it. I do have one more announcement. David, actually, if you did not want to pay cash or didn't have cash and you would like to give us $5 or $10, that's cool. And he can actually accept it on his phone. So feel free to be careful, don't trample yourselves, but he's over there if you need him. Other than that, I did have one last thing I'm going to add on to my talk, is I forgot to say, is if you want to, when you're doing web, big, small, at the same time, sometimes it's good to draw both next to each other, and you can actually see the same screens, and you can build it out that way too. That was my last thing I missed. So that's a little bonus round for you.
Would you give a shout out to the Slack channel?
Yes, I want to give a shout out to the Slack channel. If you're not on Slack, we have an IxDA Atlanta Slack channel. Which, how do you sign up for that?
IxDAatlanta.org/Slack.
IxDAatlanta.org/Slack. That's it. I don't really have anything else. You got any more announcements? You good?
The holiday party is on the 6th. Mark your calendars. It's going to be fun.
Buy a ticket because it will sell out. Thanks, everybody. Good to see you.